Tonight, you will probably open your phone in bed and scroll through hundreds of people's lives in under 10 minutes. Faces, vacations, jokes, arguments, thousands of human movements compressed into a 5-inch screen. And there's a real chance you will still feel like you haven't actually talked to a single person who knows you. For 300,000 years, that sentence wouldn't have made any sense to a human being. Because for almost the entire span of human existence, you were never out of arm's reach of another person. Not for an hour, not for a night, not even once. For your entire life. What you're about to learn is going to change the way you think about your phone, your stress, and that strange heavy feeling that shows up the moment a room finally goes quiet. Let's go back. Not to ancient Rome, not to medieval Europe, much further. Imagine a night 300,000 years ago. No cities, no roads, no walls, just grassland stretching to the horizon. A sky so dark, the Milky Way wasn't something you drove to a national park to see. It was just the sky, and in the middle of all that darkness, a small fire burning. Around that fire, maybe 30 people, not strangers, not co-workers, not followers, your mother. Your cousin's children, the man who saved your life last winter, the woman who knows your name better than you know it yourself. You were born into this group. You will die in it. And every single night of your life will look something like this. 30 bodies, one fire. The whole dark world pressing in from outside. This was the human baseline, not loneliness dressed up as community. Actual biological, physical togetherness. And to understand why you feel the way you do today, you first have to understand what it felt like to live inside that. The night began at sunset, and for most of human history, when the sun went down, the world went completely dark. Not dim, not shadowy, dark. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Before fire was controlled, humans did exactly what every other primate did. When the sun set, you found a tree. You climbed it. You stayed still. Because moving in the darkness meant becoming food. Our eyes are genuinely terrible at night. Leopards can see just fine. Hyenas can see just fine. Wolves can see just fine. For most of our evolutionary history, the night belonged to the things that hunted us. The earliest solid evidence of humans controlling fire comes from Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, roughly 1 million years ago. And fire changed everything. Not slowly, not gradually, overnight, literally. A campfire creates a circle of safety, roughly around 30 feet in diameter. Inside that circle, predators won't come. Outside that circle, you die. This is not a metaphor. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups today have documented that people who wander away from the fire at night are significantly more likely to be killed by predators. Even now, in the 21st century, fire didn't just protect people. Fire gave them something no animal had ever had before: extra hours. Before fire, the useful day ended at sunset, maybe 12 hours in summer, as few as 8 in winter. Fire added 2 to 4 usable hours to every single night for thousands of generations. And here's what humans did with those hours. They talked. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. She had spent years recording conversations among the hoansi Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last groups on Earth still living something close to the original human lifestyle. What she found was striking. During the day, about 80% of conversations were practical. Who's haunting where? Which plants are ready? Logistics, economics, negotiations. Daytime talk was work. But at night, around the fire, the entire character of conversation changed. At night, 81% of conversations were stories. Tales of people in distant places. Adventures, myths about origins of the world. Jokes that made the whole camp laugh. Wiesner argued that fireside conversation is where human culture was born. The campfire was the original theater, the original classroom, original church. It's where humans learned to think beyond the immediate present and imagine things that don't exist yet. This is what made us different. Not our tools, not our brains, not our thumbs, the fire, the dark, the voices, the stories. This is where we became us. But the stories were not the only thing happening around that fire at night. Something else was happening too. Something that reveals how completely the group was woven into the daily fabric of survival. Think about what it meant to make a successful hunt. You have been tracking an animal for hours. You have made the kill. You're carrying it back to camp and you're proud. Obviously you're proud. You just fed 30 people. Now imagine returning to the camp. Instead of praise, the group starts mocking you. That meat? That's nothing. That's barely worth eating. You would be furious. But this is exactly what happened. Hunter-gatherer anthropologists called it insulting the meat. The hoansi healer Tommaso explained it this way. We always speak of his meat as worthless. We say the kill is small, or that it is old and will have no taste. In this way, we cool his heart and make him gentle. These communities had figured out tens of thousands of years before psychology that unchecked ego destroys groups. The hunter who starts to believe he is more important than others becomes a threat. He starts hoarding, he starts demanding, he starts placing conditions on sharing. And in a group of 30 people, where survival is collective, one person deciding they matter more can collapse the entire system. So the group had a mechanism, not a law, not a punishment, a social ritual. Come back proud and will make you laugh at yourself before you become a danger to us. Now think about modern life for a second. Think about the LinkedIn post announcing a promotion with 17 paragraphs about the journey and the grateful heart. Think about the dinner party guest who can't stop talking about their salary, their house, their children's test scores. Think about the group chat where one person slowly stops asking questions and starts only making statements. We don't have a ritual for that anymore. We lost the mechanism that kept ego from poisoning community, and we are watching what happens when you don't have it. Because these labeling systems were not just culture, they were structural. Hunter-gatherer bands maintained what anthropologists call fierce egalitarianism, not soft equality, fierce equality. Group membership was fluid and optional. If a leader became overbearing, members simply moved to another band. The freedom to quit was the primary check on power. No one had the right to command another, not even in hunting, not even in gathering. And sharing was not generosity. Sharing was the law. In demand sharing cultures, you cannot refuse to share food with someone who asks. Not want, cannot. Refusing to share was grounds for expulsion from the band. And expulsion from the band meant death. So the thing that protected you most was also the thing you were most obligated to give away. Your food, your labor, your time, your attention. Connection was not optional, it was the entire structure. Now let's talk about what this constant togetherness actually did to the human body. Because this is not just cultural history, this is biology. Your brain does not treat social connection as a psychological preference. It treats it as a physical need, on par with food. Researchers discovered that the part of your brain that activates when you're socially isolated is the same region that activates when you have not eaten for 10 hours. The dopaminergic hunger centers. Your brain treats a day without people exactly the way it treats a day without food. It sends a craving signal, a biological alarm, a screaming urgent physical need. And when you are excluded from a group, when someone ignores you, when you feel left out, the region of your brain that activates is the anterior cingulate cortex. This is the same region that processes the distress of physical injury. Your brain treats social rejection the same way it treats being punched, not metaphorically, literally. This is the same hardware with the same pain signals. This makes sense when you remember what rejection meant for 300,000 years. Being cut off from your group was not embarrassing, it was a death sentence. You could not survive alone. Not for a week, not even for a night. Every single one of your ancestors who got permanently separated from their group died before they could reproduce. The ones who survived were the ones whose bodies screamed loudest when the connection was threatened. That screaming is inside you right now. And here's something that makes this even more vivid. Look at your eyes, not metaphorically. Actually, look at them. You have white sclera, the white part around your iris. No other primate does. Chimpanzees, gorillas, they all evolved dark on dark eyes. The iris is dark. The area around it is dark. You cannot tell where they're looking. That's not an accident. That's by design. Dark eyes evolved in primates for strategic concealment. If others cannot read your gaze, you have deceived them more effectively during competition. Human eyes evolved in the opposite direction. We evolved the largest, whitest sclera of any primate on Earth. Why? Because in a cooperative group, where your survival depends on trust, the ability to read where someone is looking, to track their attention, to know where they are directing focus, is more valuable than the ability to deceive. You literally evolved transparency. Your eyes are biological proof that you were built for a world where being readable was safer than being hidden. In a world of 30 people around a fire, deception was dangerous. Trust was survival, and your body encoded that in the very structure of your face. Now, let's talk about the night itself. Not just who was around you, but how you slept. Because this is where it gets genuinely strange. You were not designed to sleep the way you sleep right now. In 2001, historian Roger Ekirch published a paper that changed sleep science. He had spent 16 years digging through historical records, prayer books from the 1400s, court records, diaries, medical texts, letters from ordinary people, passages in Homer's Odyssey. He found over 500 references to something called first sleep and second sleep. Before the industrial age, people did not sleep in one continuous block. They went to bed shortly after sunset, slept for about 4 hours, then woke up. They stayed awake for 1 to 2 hours in middle of the night. Then they went back to sleep for another 4 hours until dawn. This was not insomnia. This was normal. This was how every human on the planet slept for thousands of years. And what did people do during that wakeful period? They visited neighbors. They interpreted their dreams while they were fresh. They prayed. They lay in bed and simply thought. A doctor's manual from the 1500s advised patients to study and reflect during those quiet hours between first and second sleep, when the mind was calm and the world was still. In 1992, psychiatrist Thomas Wehr at the National Institute of Mental Health ran an experiment. He took a group of volunteers and removed all artificial light from their lives for 1 month. They experienced 14 hours of darkness every night, just like our ancestors would have. Within weeks, every single participant settled into the same pattern. 4 hours of sleep, 1 to 3 hours of quiet wakefulness, 4 more hours of sleep. Nobody told them to do this. Nobody suggested it. Their bodies just did it, as if some ancient program had been waiting inside them the whole time, buried under centuries of artificial light. And during that wakeful period, Wehr measured their hormone levels and found something remarkable. Their brains were producing elevated levels of prolactin, the same hormone released during meditation. During deep prayer, they described feeling peaceful, reflective, almost meditative. It wasn't just a gap in sleep. It was its own distinct state of consciousness, one that most modern humans have never experienced. And here's the connection to loneliness that nobody talks about. Your brain requires what researchers call a social safety signal to fully enter deep sleep. The sound of breathing nearby, the warmth of another body, the ambient presence of people who are watching while you rest. Without those signals, your brain stays partially alert. It wakes you in small micro-awakenings throughout the night. Not because something is wrong, but because of the world you're evolved in. Silence at night meant danger. We didn't just change when we sleep. We eliminated an entire phase of human consciousness. That quiet, reflective state between first and second sleep. The state Wehr's subject described as meditative doesn't exist anymore for most people. Instead, we have insomnia and we treat it like a disorder. But what if we wake up at 2 a.m. and lying there in the dark? Isn't your body malfunctioning? What if it's your body remembering what it was built to do? So what killed it? Light. In the 1600s, cities began installing street lamps. Paris was one of the first. Then cheaper candles, and then gas lamps in the 1800s. Then in 1879, Thomas Edison commercialized the electric light bulb. And within a generation, the night as humans had known it for 300,000 years was gone. Modern humans are exposed to artificial light an average of 7 to 8 hours after sunset. This light, especially the blue light from screens, suppresses your body's production of melatonin, the hormone that regulates sleep. Your body doesn't know the difference between a light bulb and the sun. When light hits your retina at 11 p.m., your brain thinks it's daytime. It delays melatonin release. It fragments your sleep. It disrupts the circadian rhythm that evolved over millions of years. We conquered the night, we flooded it with light, and we thought that was progress. Now, I want you to give some numbers because this stops being abstract when you see the data. Today, 17% of Americans report having zero close friends. Zero. In 1990, that number was 3%. The average American now spends 6 hours and 40 minutes alone every single day. For young people between 15 and 29, physical alone time increased by nearly 50% between 2010 to 2023. And here's what that costs you. Lacking social connection carries a mortality risk equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Your risk of premature death increases by 29%. Your risk of coronary heart disease increases by 29%. Your risk of stroke increases by 32%. Your risk of clinical dementia in old age increases by approximately 50%. Loneliness doesn't hurt, it kills. Measurably, reliably. In ways that show up in blood tests and brain scans and mortality statistics. And here's the number that is the most revealing of all. The loneliest people today are not the people spending most time alone. Let that sit for a second. Adults over 60 spend more time physically alone than any other age group. Over 7 hours a day. For those living alone, over 10 hours. And yet, they report the lowest rates of loneliness, 6 to 10%. Now look at young adults between 18 and 44. They spend more time with other people. They have more social contacts, more group chats, more events, more plans. And they report the highest chronic loneliness, 29%. The most connected generation in human history is the loneliest. Why? Because there's a difference between being around people and being known by people. Our ancestors woke up every morning already inside their community. Connection wasn't scheduled. It wasn't a dinner reservation or a calendar invite. It was the environment itself. And for modern humans, connection is an activity. Something you arrange, something you drive to, something you plan, and then come home from, alone. And this brings us to the question this entire video has been building toward. Did ancient humans ever feel truly alone? Yes, almost certainly. They were not protected from loneliness. They were human. They had the same nervous system you have, the same pain circuits, the same capacity of grief. Children died, partners died, friends fought and never spoke again. Groups fractured, people were exiled. People grieved losses so complete they probably sat by the fire in silence while everyone around them talked and felt utterly completely alone. The loneliness hurt them exactly the way it hurts you. But here is the crucial difference. For them, loneliness was an event, not an environment. It was something that happened to you, a rupture, a loss, a specific wound, and then the group pulled you back in. The default condition was connection. Loneliness entered their lives when something went wrong. For many people today, loneliness persists even when nothing has gone wrong at all. It has become the background condition, the water we swim in. Ancient humans were not magically immune to pain. They were not happy by nature. They were not built differently. The difference is simpler than that. They returned to connection faster, because connection was always right there, 30 feet away, around a fire, waiting. You don't have to fix loneliness when the cure is already the air you breathe. And here is the strangest part of all of this. Loneliness spreads like an infection. If you're directly connected to a lonely person, your own risk of loneliness increased by 52%. At 2 degrees of separation, it increases by 25%. At 3 degrees, by 15%. Your friend's friend's friend being lonely is making you more likely to feel lonely. Researchers believe loneliness changes behavior. It makes people more guarded, more suspicious, less warm, and that behavior ripples outward through the network. There is also a more disturbing version of this. In primate societies and in human communities, lonely individuals can be collectively rejected and pushed further into isolation by the rest of the group, not out of cruelty, out of an ancient survival mechanism that treats isolates as structurally dangerous. The very thing that makes you need connection most can make you less likely to receive it. But here is what gives you hope. Happiness is more contagious than loneliness. Having one additional happy friend increases your own well-being by 9%. An unhappy friend only pulls you down by 7%. The math favors connection, and simply adding any friend to your network, regardless of their emotional state, reduces the total time you spend feeling lonely by 5%. Any friend, just one more person, 5% less lonely. And people who went camping for just 1 week with no artificial light at all had their melatonin cycles reset by nearly 2 hours. Their bodies begin producing more melatonin at sunset instead of hours after it. 300,000 years of programming, reasserting itself in 1 week. That's all it takes. 7 days without artificial light, and your body remembers exactly what it was built for. Your body has not forgotten, it's been waiting. And here is what I want you to take from this. Ancient humans felt loneliness, but it was an emergency, a temporary rupture in the default state of connection. For many of us today, it has become the default state itself. This is what changed. Not us, not our capacity for connection, not our need for it, just the distance between us and the fire. You were built for 30 people who knew your name, and your history, and your failures, and your face, and were close enough to hear you breathe. You were built for nights where a hunter came home proud and the whole camp laughed at him, to keep his ego small enough to fit inside a community. You were built for eyes that were designed to be read, not hidden, for a darkness so complete that the stars were company, for a night that had 2 halves, when a quiet space in between where you lay and thought about your life in a state of peace that most modern humans have never felt. You were built for mornings where you woke up already inside your community, not scheduled for a call, not planning a dinner, just already there. And most of us are not living anywhere near that. So when you feel it, that heaviness, that subtle wrongness, that ache in the middle of an otherwise fine day, that's not weakness, that's not ingratitude, that's not a character flaw. That is your nervous system doing exactly what it evolved to do, screaming in the only language it knows. You're alone, find your people, now, before dark. Not because ancient humans never felt what you feel, but because when they feel it, the fire was 30 feet away, and so was everyone who knew them. The fire is still in you, it's been in you for 1,000,000 years. You're not broken, you're not too sensitive, you're not asking for too much. You are a human being whose entire body was designed for warmth and closeness and firelight and stories in the dark. For hunters who came home to be gently mocked back into humility. For eyes wide enough to be read across a fire. For nights divided in 2. for a quiet meditative space that modern civilization accidentally erased. For 300,000 years, every single one of your ancestors had all of that. Every single night, they gathered around fires and told stories that built civilizations. They slept in two faces in a window of quiet reflection in between. They woke in the dark, they lay there in silence and thought about their lives, their dreams, and the world they would wake up to in the morning. And when loneliness found them, and it did find them, they did not have to carry it long, because the cure was already right there, breathing, warm, 30 feet away. We traded all of that for a light switch, and most of us never even knew it was gone. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.